DC Top 10. This is myself and Kevin's new show. You might remember us from Segway. Well, otherwise you probably wouldn't have seen us anyway. But yeah, in this show we'll be mostly reviewing games and films, but in a top 10 format. Each week we'll have our number spot for the week. So this week, of course, is number 10. I'll be doing the video game section, as you probably noticed from the titles, and Kevin will be doing his film section, which will be shortly after mine. So, to get us started, at number 10 is the post-nuclear franchise known as Fallout, a series of RPGs published by Interplay Entertainment and later by Bethesda Softworks, also known for their Elder Scrolls series. The story is set during the 22nd and 23rd centuries in post-war America, and now commonly referred to as the Wasteland. The series story begins following World War II, where the technological aspirations in the 1950s became a reality. Robots were made commonplace and military organisations across the world perfected the use of atomic weapons. While it advanced technologically, America stayed the same culturally well into the 21st century. Roughly 100 years before the start of the series, there was a period known as the Resource War, which to be honest is fairly self-explanatory. During this period, the United Nations disband, China invades Alaska, America takes out its problems on Canada, and babies cry all over the world. All this culminates in 2077 with a 2-hour-long exchange of nuclear ordnance, creating the post-apocalyptic romp we know as Fallout. The first game takes place in 2161 in Southern California, beginning in Vault 13. By the way, vaults are a series of Fallout shelters developed by Vault-Tec and are featured throughout all games. The protagonist, the Vault Dweller, is sent out into the wasteland to find a replacement water chip, sort of like a computer chip responsible for water recycling and pumping machinery within the vault. Upon returning the chip, you are then tasked with stopping an army of super mutants within a allotted time. Completion of this, the Vault is exiled from the Vault Dweller is exiled from the vault. Kind of shitty thanks, really. In Fallout 2, we find out that the Vault Dweller travelled north and started a tribal village called Ario, in what we know as Oregon. In the decades since the formation of Ario, several new factions have come into power. First, the Californian Republic, or NCR, a democratic federation striving to restore order and progress to the wasteland. Then there's the Enclave, a military organisation descended from members of the pre-war government. Seeing everyone as mutants and generally lesser beings, they seek to eradicate them from the wasteland. Generally speaking, these are the bad guys and main antagonists of the series. Then there's the Brotherhood of Steel, descendant from war veterans, whose main objective is the gathering of knowledge and technology, and strictly speaking, these are kind of like the good guys in the series. In 2241, Ario is suffering a drought, and the village elders ask a direct descendant of the Vault Dweller, referred to as the Chosen One, to find a Garden of Eden creation kit. The GEC is a device that can create thriving communities out of the post-apocalyptic wasteland. Created by Vault-Tec, some were distributed vaults in the wasteland, and you do tend to come across some of them in the series. After retrieving the device, the Chosen One discovers Ario has been captured by the Enclave. The Chosen One then travels to an Enclave-controlled I-Rig, destroying it and freeing the other villagers. Using the GEC, Ario is transformed into a prosperous community. Fallout 3 changed the series location from California to Washington DC, or as it's called, the Capital Wasteland. Here we follow the adventures of the Lone Wanderer, a young inhabitant of Vault 101. The player's father, James, who is voiced by Liam Neeson, escapes the vault. And following in his father's footsteps, the player leaves the vault, eventually finding James with the help of a radio correspondent known as Tree Dog, and helps him in his quest to restore water to the wasteland, actually aided as well by the Brotherhood of Steel. The Enclave returns to wreak havoc, culminating in the Lone Wanderer destroying their new base in Adams Air Force Base. I said base twice, great. The latest in the series, Fallout New Vegas, takes place in 2281, 4 years after Fallout 3 and 39 years after Fallout 2, just for reference sake. The NCR plays a major role in this game, vying for control of Vegas, an oasis in the midst of the wasteland with free electricity and water to those who control Hoover Dam. The player, now a wandering courier, takes it upon him or herself to fight for the future of New Vegas. As of yet, no canon ending has been decided by Bethesda. This brings me to why Fallout deserves the number 10 spot. Each game offered multiple endings and ways to play. The environment tells more about the history of the wasteland than any books you actually find. Every character you meet has their own story to tell, and the player can spend literally 100 hours doing side quests that may or may not affect the quality of the wasteland. Some quests can be humorous, some can be downright creepy, as I found out lately when playing Fallout 3. there was a reference to H.P. Lovecraft. Your decisions are almost always questionable. While a certain faction may seem like the good guys, their individual members will always have ulterior motives. To be honest, number 10 was going to either go to the Elder Scrolls or Fallout. In the end, Fallout won out for the believable characters and enemies, not to mention the nature of the wasteland. I'm going to hand you over to Kevin now. Hope you enjoyed this week and tune in next week for number 9.
War. War never changes.
I'm Kevin from Segway, and this is my top 10 films. For this top 10, I'll be doing my top 10 sci-fi, starting at number 10 with unlikely choice, Stargate, the movie. The story of Stargate is about an ancient device found in the sands of Egypt in 1928 by Dr. Langford and his daughter Catherine. Catherine, who later goes on to hire Dr. Daniel Jackson, who is played by James Spader. Now, Daniels was left out of academia for his wild theories that the ancient pyramids were actually landing platforms for alien races. Daniel then goes on to decipher the symbols on the device as known as the Stargate. After discovering what the symbols mean, a Colonel Jack O'Neill, is brought in to lead a team through the device to see what's on the other side. Jack O'Neill been played by Kurt Russell. Once they get on the other side, they discover that they're actually in the middle of a pyramid very similar to that found in the desert in Egypt. Soon after that, they come across the local indigenous population known as the Abydosians, led by Kasuf, played by Eric Avari, and his son Skara, played by Alexa Cruz, the only two actors that actually appear in the film and both the TV series. Soon after, they discovered that these people are actually slaves to the sun god Ra. Now you're thinking, sun god in an alien planet, what's going on here? But it turns out that the sun god Ra is actually a member of an alien race called the Goa'uld, who on thousands of years ago lived on Earth and enslaved the human population, till there was an uprising and Ra left the planet and the Stargate was buried, till discovered in 1928. Now, my reasoning for putting the Stargate into my top 10, now a lot of you won't agree with it, is because overall, Stargate is quite a good movie, with a quite original storyline for a sci-fi film, which is very hard to do. Directed by Ronald Emmerich and released by MGM Studios, Stargate was one of the highest-selling sci-fi films in 1994. But the main reasons why Stargate, not just because of its quality of a film, why it gets into my top 10 spot, is because it paved the way for the very successful TV series Stargate SG-1, which sees the returns of Daniel Jackson and Jack O'Neill, now played by Richard Dean Anderson, as he made known as MacGyver, and Michael Shanks. Two new characters brought into the show were Teal'c, played by Christopher Judge, who is an alien enslaved by these Goa'uld, who turns on him and joins Earth to help in the fight, and a Captain Carter, who later on becomes Colonel Carter, a scientist / soldier who joins the SG-1 and helps in the fight. The success of the film led to such a success in the TV series that it also led into two spin-offs, Stargate Atlantis and the slightly less successful Stargate Universe, also with one and only season of the animated series Stargate Infinity. Yeah, and so my reasoning for liking this film so much was the use of the ancient Egyptian mythology brought into the main storyline, which I thought, now in fairness, was very well done and somewhat of an original idea, which is very hard to do in a sci-fi movie these days. The credits for the film has to go to director Ronald Emmerich, who went on to direct Independence Day, and also David Arnold, who did the iconic music for it, who went on to also do the music for Independence Day. So that's it this week for my top 10. That has been Stargate. Tune in next week for my number 9, and we'll see you then.
Give my regards to King Tut, asshole.